Hey guys, so if you want to see how I turn this loft area into this, stay tuned. So off camera, I removed the handrail, and what I want to show you here is that I was pretty lucky because I actually had power coming in into the bottom of the handrail. So this will be useful for later when I want to add power into the wall. The way I build the wall is not very conventional. Usually you want to build the full wall, on the ground. But because I had power coming in and I didn't really think about a good way to pass my wires, I just decided to first install the bottom plates and then add each of the studs one by one. So definitely not the usual way. Another reason that I built the wall this way is because my ceiling right above it had a bow in it, and I thought that I would want to match the curvature of the bow on the top plate of my wall, so that when I add my windows into the wall, it would not pinch, or it would just look good and consistent. So what you see me do here is measure each end of my wall and make sure that the distance is the same on both ends. Sometimes it's hard to measure an exact gap with the measuring tape, and so this is a tip that my dad taught me. So you grab two stick of wood and you have them slide against each other, and then you can tape them and then use that to actually cut your wood at your table saw or your miter saw. So now that my top piece is pretty much parallel to the ceiling, I can level my wall. So I pre-drill and I attach it to the wall and the floor using some lag screws. And give it a nice little squeeze. This is going to be a lot stronger than typical screws, and since it's a wall, you don't want it to move if you lean on it or anything. Then I was actually ready to install each one of my sticks on the wall. So for this, I used the same method than earlier, using the two pieces of wood that I slid together, and then I would go downstairs, cut that 2x4 at the table saw, and come back upstairs and install it. And then finally, I added this other half wall in the other direction, making the wall two-dimensional. This adds a lot of strength to the wall when you push against it because the pieces are secured together. I can now cut the wall to length while at the same time testing my son's dodging skills. He wasn't too mad though, and even helped for once. I added an extra piece of wood right here so that I can secure the handrail right to it. So now it's time to install the drywall. So I was pretty excited for it because this is when you start seeing the vision that you had for the project. So I cut my sheetrock to length and installed it using regular drywall screws. I think I used about 8 to 12 inches spacing for it. And I worked my way all the way down the wall until I was done. So now I decided to install these corner trims. At that time of the process, the idea was that I would close the wall at the end because the intent was that I needed to attach the frame for the windows from underneath the wall. And I decided to do something else eventually. So definitely don't do this. Close the wall first. It's alright though, every problem has a solution. So here what I'm doing is I'm mudding every corners, every seam that I have. So you want to make sure you take your time on that process. I used to only mud once and then paint over it. No, you definitely want to mud once and then come back the next day, sand, and then do this 2 or 3 times. At least 3 times would be great. And that way, when you're able to paint, you can barely see any seam in the mud. And this is what it looks like after adding the joint compound. So I ended up adding about 3 outlets to this wall. So for this, you just have to secure the outlet box to one of the studs and fish your wire through to the outlet. And then I like to use this tool to remove the jacket from the copper. And then I use some Wago to connect my cables together. This is just a bridge that I do for the ground wire. Then I secure it to the outlet, and then I can connect the black and the white wire to the outlet. And that's it. You're done with the outlet. Now you can secure it back to the box. So in the house, they have some knockdown pattern on the sheetrock. So that's what I did here. I used my compressor and I bought this gun that kind of spray the mud in a pattern that looks like the knockdown. So you just want to go in circles kind of slowly. You have to fine tune the right pressure and the amount of pressure that you also put on the trigger. But after a few tests you found that, and this is what it looks like. Then the final step is to actually wait about 20-30 minutes for it to dry a little bit, and then come back with a flat spatula or whatever this is called and actually knock it down. So now finally I could start on the window. So off camera I routed a groove into this piece of wood, and this groove is what will receive the window. You can't really tell right now, but it'll make sense in a little bit. So I secured it to the half wall and then made sure I leveled it on the ceiling and on the other wall. And then I could install this window guide to the ceiling, attaching it well to the ceiling joist. I think they're spaced out about 2 feet apart. So this is the joinery I ended up using to attach the vertical part. I think it's called tongue and groove. And because I used this, I actually didn't need to have the wall kept open. And so now finally, after a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks of work, I could finally slide the window in. It definitely took me a few tries. At first, the window was pinching either on the top or the bottom, but eventually it worked out. At this moment, I realized I definitely didn't need to add any screws from the bottom. Originally I'd wanted to keep it open, keep the sheetrock open so that I can screw those verticals from the bottom and maybe add a screw at the top but at an angle. But turns out that those verticals were so tight for their fit that I didn't need anything else. So now for the rest of the project, it's basically what we just did, but on repeat. So adding the guide for the bottom and the top, then the verticals, and then sliding the windows. For the windows, I went with 1/4-inch tempered glass. I bought those from a nearby store that usually sell equipment for showers. And I think they were quoting me about $125 per glass, but it was much better than some of the quote I got. I think I got some that were pricing at $175. So make sure you shop around because you can find all sorts of prices. And now guys, this is the final look. So we have our half wall and the 4 windows, and I must confess I actually went ahead and redid the whole floor. I added a wall, did some painting and the trims, but I didn't record any of that. So yeah, anyway, hope you liked the build. It was fun for me. It was a good learning experience too, and very excited that this space is finally done.